why the people in Virginia never understood Benjamin Franklin. Let me tell you, there was a world of difference between Virginia and Massachusetts or Philadelphia back in those days. As young poor adults, Ginger and I had recently purchased a brand new house for $16,000. We had it built. Ginger had introduced me to vegetable gardening. We were in our mid-20s, and this was around the year 1975, I suppose, or maybe 78. And we'd grown corn successfully, sweet potatoes, carrots, and I put in huge raised beds, and raised simply by digging out dirt and piling it up. I didn't have any kind of structure to hold it in place. But I grew everything. We planted muscadines, we had crab apples, and we had lots and lots of produce in our garden. And I like to think of myself as a back-to-nature person, kind of like people are doing on YouTube these days. They're going out in the country, buying 3 acres and trying to be self-sufficient. And that's what I aspired to do. I wanted to know how to do things. I wanted to fix things. One of the first things I did in my new house was I took a circular saw and cut a hole in the roof and put one of those shiny silver turbines on my house. In fact, I put 2 of them on so it keep the air circulating in the attic. And I put a whole house attic fan in that little house to keep it cool. So we were proud. We were strivers. We were young, energetic, and started with absolutely nothing. No help from our families. Everything that we did, including getting our education, we paid for ourselves. Thanks to the GI Bill benefits, too. Now, my Uncle Francis lived in Hershey, Pennsylvania. He came, as my father did, and several other men, brothers. They lived on a farm that was absolutely on the border of North Carolina and Virginia. My family had been plantation owners in Virginia since the 1700s. But anyway, Uncle Francis was rich. He kind of reminds me of Scrooge a little bit. But he wasn't cheap. He was just rich. And he loved to brag about his John Deere riding lawnmower. And he had a 50-foot television antenna. And he had a play slot machine in the basement of his house. Now, what's the point of a play slot machine? I mean, if it doesn't put out real quarters or 50-cent pieces, I'm not interested. But Uncle Francis was a snob. I mean, that's the way we always felt about him. He probably wasn't, but he was the rich one of the family. Now, one brother got the farm, or the plantation. One brother, Francis, got education and became a lawyer and rich. And the other brother, my dad, sold insurance. But anyway, we ran into Uncle Francis one day, and I was showing him pictures, excitedly showing him pictures. I was finally a success. And I showed him pictures. This is our corn. These are our corn beds. This is our. Look at these zucchini squash, this big, Uncle Francis, and we were so excited. He says, "Well, it looks like you're becoming a gentleman farmer." I didn't exactly know what a gentleman farmer was back in those days, but I knew the term gentleman, and I did not feel like a gentleman at all, because when I went out in the garden in the summertime in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, it was like 150 degrees, and it was dirty, nasty, awful work, and I certainly was not a gentleman. And I told him so. I said, "No, I'm not a gentleman farmer. I'm just a farmer." And I like getting dirty. I like having my hands in the soil. And he just went right over the top of his head. He had no scope for the imagination for toiling away in the dirt. Now, Benjamin Franklin, born in New England, was not a gentleman, though sometimes he did aspire to be a gentleman, because that is really, this is an English concept. I guess people wanted to separate themselves from the rabble. They didn't want to be considered, see, back in those days, you had the rich, very few, and you had the poor, very many. And you did not want to be, you didn't want a suntan. You know what I mean? You didn't want a suntan. You didn't want to look like you were a worker. But anyway, Ben Franklin changed all of that. Ben Franklin made working and getting ahead part of the American dream. I mean, this was a new concept. Very seldom could you change your position in life through hard work. At best, you were just trying to survive. But in America, people could actually get rich working. And that is a novel concept. Benjamin Franklin had made enough money by the time he was 42 years old. He retired. And of course, his idea was he would now become a gentleman. But he never, ever was a gentleman. And in fact, when he went to the King of France, he wore his regular hair and his old humble clothes, and the King of France was enchanted. I guess he could have not been enchanted and thrown him out, but Ben Franklin took that chance, and he made a name for himself and invented the American dream all at the same time. So there. What does a gentleman do? What do the Virginia gentlemen do? Well, George Washington loved fox hunting above everything else. He loved soldiering. He loved supervising his estates. And he loved, probably even above fox hunting, acquiring new lands, obviously at the expense of people who used to own those properties. That's what George Washington did. And he was a great president, but he aspired above all to be a gentleman farmer, which meant you didn't farm at all. You had other people do the work. And what about Thomas Jefferson? Gentleman, Thomas Jefferson. what Thomas Jefferson loved to do was study. He was a scholar and a student his whole life. I mean, I guess it's an accident that we got him as president. And Thomas Jefferson got into a little mischief we won't talk about with so much leisure time on his hands. But we can't really picture Thomas Jefferson as a worker, though he certainly did work. So, the reason the people of Virginia never understood Ben Franklin was because he started working as a boy, and he never stopped until he was 84 and dead. Ben Franklin epitomizes the American dream that through hard work, people with no education, no family connections, no money, can rise to the top of American society and succeed in America. And that's the American dream. That's what Ben Franklin gave us. And who really cares about being a gentleman anyway? Thanks for watching.